into how to prioritize your mental health during these times that seem to be leading to maybe a second lockdown or stay-at-home orders. So after this intro, we'll get started. Talking about trauma doesn't have to feel overwhelming. We can have conversations as if we're talking to our best friends. And that is what I want to do with all of you. So grab some cake pops and some coffee and let's share some stories. Talking about trauma. Wonderful. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I see Peter. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. And Lucia. Yay. Thank you. Today, I really want to talk about how to prioritize your mental health during these times, but also how to deal with triggers when they come up during isolation. This is something that I know is weighing on a lot of people's minds as more stay-at-home orders are issued, shelter-in-place orders, and then also even potential lockdowns. And so one of the things that I want to talk to you about is, please remember, this is the one thing that I really hope everybody remembers right now, is that there's a ton of fear that is going around because of all of this, but this is not your first time experiencing this anymore. And so what I'm getting from a lot of people, and even including myself, is, oh my God, no, I can't feel the way I felt the last time we were on lockdown, or I can't experience the same things that I had to experience. I can't deal with the same type of triggers that came up the first time. And what I say to that is, you're not going to, because this is not your first time experiencing this anymore. That doesn't mean that it's going to be so much easier, or you're just going to glide through it, but it does mean that now you have experiences to take from the first time you experienced this, and you can use that to kind of formulate the plan of how you're going to work through things this time. And I'm going to help you do that as well today, but I just wanted to start with that reminder. Oh, good, good. I'm glad Lucia likes the topic. Thank you. And Brett, thank you for the intro. Awesome. So the first thing that I would love for you to do, if you are interested, or if you don't have the ability to do it right now, please take some time to do later, is just, with the knowledge that you have experienced lockdown, have experienced isolation before, probably even like about 6 months ago, just think about what made life easier for you during those times. What did you learn during those times? So for example, maybe you learned, I have to meal prep on Sunday night, otherwise I am not going to have time, or things are going to be too crazy in the week. So I have to prep all the meals on Sunday before the week starts. Or maybe you learned, I need to have an actual structure to my day. I need to wake up at this time. I need to put real people clothes on, not just hang out in my sweatpants. And I need to know what I'm doing every hour of my workday. That's great too. So just to make a list, take some time to make a list of all the things that you learned during the first isolation and what made life easier during those times. And now, if anybody wants to share anything on their list or anything they can think of, please feel free to do so. I'm just going to move on so that we have time to get to everything. But if you have any questions or anything to share, please pop them in the comments and I will respond to them. So based on that list that you make, or those things that, hi Drew, yay, oh great, from Los Angeles, okay. Based on that list of things that you've learned from the first time that you were in isolation, now you can start to kind of formulate your plan. And what I mean by that is, again, if you learned that you need to meal prep, choose a day that you're going to do that every week. If you learn that you need to have a structured schedule to your day, plan to do that. Say Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, I wake up at this time, and then I work out, and then I put real people clothes on, and I do this, this, this. But create a plan. Yes, these are very uncertain times. We've heard that phrase a ton, and things are constantly changing, but just having this small bit of structure and a plan can go a long way in just being able to kind of stay sane and centered during these times. And so now, again, please pop any questions you have in there or comments. I would love to hear any of the things that you guys learned or you all learned during quarantine? What helped you? What was like one thing that you can say, oh God, that I'm really glad I learned that about myself, or something that helped me during that time. The other thing I really want to talk about today, because I've had a lot of questions about it, is how to deal with triggers that come up during isolation. So if you actually scroll down on my profile, a few months ago, I did a whole broadcast that talked about the specific triggers that can come up during isolation and why, especially for trauma survivors, because a lot of the things that we were experiencing, like maybe feeling trapped or not knowing what the future holds, all of these things can resemble some of the things that we experienced during trauma, and so they were leading to a lot of triggers. So I talked about those specific triggers and how to work through them. So if you're interested in going back and watching that, I encourage you to do so. Otherwise, I would really like to talk today about just how to generally work through some triggers that may come up for you during isolation. So the first thing that I want to talk about in regards to that is a lot of times, of course, we all know that triggers can be caused by so many different things, but a lot of times a trigger can really be prevented when we are able to stay grounded and present with ourselves throughout the day. And so what I mean by that is what we don't want to do is dissociate. And what I mean by dissociating is just kind of mentally leaving your body and just going somewhere else. And that's a defense mechanism, a protective tool that we developed during trauma, and it helped us to survive that trauma. But as adults, we tend to dissociate when we are not necessarily in a traumatic situation or experiencing trauma, but when there's any signs of danger or discomfort, we tend to dissociate. And when we leave our bodies, that makes us far more vulnerable to experiencing triggers than when we're able to just stay present and grounded. So I'm going to look at the comments here first because I see a few. Okay, Lucia says, I took this time to cleanse my group of friends and people close to me. I had no idea how many toxic people I had around. Oh, that is such a great point, Lucia. I have heard that from so many people. I think this time, I guess we can say a blessing, if we want to use that word, of this time has been just really realizing the people who are most important to you and finding ways to connect with them. It's a lot harder, obviously, as everyone knows, to connect with people. And so we're no longer just casting a huge net and just seeing who we can catch and hang out with. Now we actually have to consciously choose who we want to connect with. And so this has been a real time to kind of, like you said, cleanse your group of friends. So great. Drew, ooh, great question. So is meditation considered dissociating? No, I'm going to kind of assume maybe the thought process behind this, and then I'm going to answer it. So I think a lot of times people, because when you meditate, maybe you're visualizing, or you're visualizing yourself maybe going somewhere else, or just imagining different things. And maybe some could think that possibly that could be dissociating, but I completely disagree. I believe meditation is actually a really huge way to stay centered and to come back to yourself while you're dissociating. And that's actually going to be a tool that I talk about using in a little bit. And the reason, the difference is dissociating is usually when it's something that we don't consciously do. We don't even realize we're doing it, but maybe you'll be working and you won't be, you'll be thinking about 85 other things while you're working, or you'll be talking to your family or trying to eat dinner with your family and you're just completely off in a different place. You're not even paying any attention to the people that you're around. That's more like dissociation. Meditation is a conscious decision to pause, be still, and just think for yourself. So there is a difference between those two. And that's a great question. Thank you, Joe. And Mikey, awesome. Hi, Mikey from Los Angeles. Great. So one of the, I would like to talk about some of the ways that you can stay centered and present and really prevent yourself from dissociating throughout the day, especially if we are back in isolation. So the first thing that I'd like to say about that is just go back to your plan, that plan that we created at the beginning based on that list of things that you've learned. And then structure your day. Make sure, let's say there's 5 things that you can do every day. And if 5 feels like too much, choose 3 things that you can do every day that bring you back to yourself. And I will give you some examples. So first of all, some really easy, actually I wrote some down that I just want to make sure I get to. Okay, so the one really easy way to ground is to get outside. So I know a lot of people are afraid of this isolation or this lockdown because they live in colder climates, and it's not going to be as easy or comfortable to spend long periods of time outside. And so, but even to those people, and I'm included in that, I believe that there are ways for us to just get outside, even if it's just for 1 minute, or even if it's cold, we open our window, we just stick our head outside and like take a breath of fresh air. That is immediately grounding. So one thing that you can add to your day is either go for a walk, if that's allowed, if you're able to do that. Spend some time on your porch, on your back porch, or even just opening a window and getting fresh air. Just make sure that you spend some time outside. Again, the second tool that I am suggesting is, to answer Drew's question again, is meditation. And sometimes people are hesitant with meditation because they think it has to be some formal thing where you sit down and you're sitting super straight and your legs are crossed and you're like chanting, or you have a guided meditation. It does not have to be formal. I refer to meditation as just my quiet, still, alone time. So what I suggest is just setting a timer for 5 minutes every single day. There's no compromise on this. If you do one thing, please just do this. Set your timer for 5 minutes and either lay on your couch, or I like to lay on my floor. Just find a space in your home to just lay down or sit, whatever you feel comfortable. Close your eyes and just breathe. And you don't have to worry about doing anything else. If you want to, you can ask yourself questions. You can say, how are you feeling? What do you need right now? Or you can look up a guided meditation and do that. But you don't have to do any of those things. Just sitting with your eyes closed and quiet and knowing that this time is just for you for those 5 minutes and breathing can be huge in keeping yourself connected and grounded. Let's look at these questions or these comments. So Mikey, walking my dog is by far the best part of my day, even when she's naughty. Love getting outside. Yes, I love that. And that's so wonderful. And I think during lockdown and isolation, pets were huge for people, and just being able to, one, get outside with your dog is wonderful. And then also just having another living being around you is really helpful. So I love that, Mikey. That was great. And Brett, I remembered how healing just sitting down and listening to good music is. Yes, Brett, you read my mind. That was another thing. So sometimes if you are finding that it's really hard to commit to just sitting in silence for 5 minutes, which really is not difficult, I truly encourage you to just try to add that to your day. But if you really don't feel, if that's not resonating with you, one of the things I suggest is just making time, even just to listen to one of your favorite songs during the day. So Brett, this is perfect. Just sitting and listening to at least one song that just makes you feel really good and calm and relaxed is perfect. I'm gonna sneeze. Okay. A few other things that you can do that are quick and easy for grounding is, one, cold shower. So again, during the winter, maybe that's not your favorite thing to do, but truly just a cold shower, hop in the water for about 30 seconds to even a minute. And then you can turn the water back onto hot, but just getting some cold water on your body is really grounding. Again, listening to music and dancing. Maybe some people, Brett, yeah, you said that you like to sit and listen to music. That is wonderful and perfect. If other people feel called to dance, dancing can be a really wonderful way to get back into your body and be grounded and centered. And then lastly, I've talked about this in other videos. I bring it up almost every time as a tool, but it is really a weird and fun way to stay grounded, is to take a stainless steel spoon, and I know it sounds weird, but it truly does work, and rub it on the bottoms of your feet. So every day when you wake up, and then maybe before you go to bed, just rub the bottoms of your feet with a stainless steel spoon, and that's a really helpful way to get grounded again. So those are just some fun ways, and you've already shared some, but if any of you have your own grounding techniques, that would be awesome. I would love to hear them. I think choosing, again, 1, 2, 3 of those things to incorporate through your day during isolation is going to be monumental in just helping you stay sane. And they're small things. So a lot of times we brush them to the side because we think, like, how can something so small really help us? But doing those things is just, it's you telling yourself that you're prioritizing your mental health, you're prioritizing you, and you're just taking time to come back to yourself. So it really does make a big difference. So now I would, oh good, yes. Oh, wonderful. Lucia likes 3 of those. Perfect. So now I would really like to talk about what happens if you are dealing with a trigger, you're in the middle of a trigger. So you did your things, you've been able to stay grounded, and you haven't really dissociated. Awesome. But still something comes up and you feel triggered. How do you deal with that? So I'm going to kind of walk you through my process for dealing with triggers, and then we can talk about anything that resonates with you or any things that you have found that's been helpful for you. Ooh, okay, so Lucia said, I do the 5-step grounding technique, but more for when I'm getting a panic attack. Yes, okay, perfect. I feel like I've heard of that, but I don't know the exact details. So Lucia, if you want to, like, you don't have to explain the whole thing, but what are the 5 steps? I'd be really interested to hear those. And I'm actually going to share with you my steps for dealing with a trigger, and I would love to see if they line up. So the first thing that I suggest when you're experiencing a trigger is just leaving the situation. So if we're talking about isolation, right? So we're not in an office, you're probably not with a lot of people. So if you are in your home in isolation and a trigger comes up, I just suggest leaving the space that you're in. So if you can go to another room, if you can go outside, that's a bonus. If you can just go into the bathroom, whatever space feels good to you, just leave the situation and allow yourself to think in a new space. The second thing that I recommend is starting to, and again, I've talked about this in previous videos too, but you really want to get back to the present moment, because when you're experiencing a trigger, your mind and your body thinks that you are back in a situation where you experience trauma. So it's really hard for your mind and your body to acknowledge that you are actually in the present moment and that you're safe. And so reminding yourself that you are in the present moment and you're safe is vital. So one of the ways that I like to do that, and it's so easy and it's so helpful, is just listing colors and objects that I see around me. So once I've left the space, I say, okay, blue towel, red cup, brown desk, and I'll just list off all of the colors and the things that I see. And I can do that for about a minute. And then after that minute, I'll start expanding. I will say, like, okay, yellow pillow. I am in the present moment. I am in my apartment. I'm in my home. I am safe. I'm in my living room. And you can just start expanding on that and talking yourself through. Once you get to that point, I would say, and it may take more than a minute, and that is okay. Just do these things until you start to feel yourself gradually coming down from that trigger. After that, I like to add breathing. Sometimes I do these other things, the previous 2 steps, before breathing, because sometimes when I'm in the middle of a trigger, I cannot focus enough to be able to breathe properly or do a breathing technique. And so the next thing that I suggest is really start to focus on your breathing once you are able to get back to the present moment a little bit. And I really enjoy box breathing for that. And that's just a technique where you breathe in, inhale for like 4 seconds, hold at the top of that inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then just keep doing that. That's a really great way to slow your heart rate, get back to the present moment, and really start kind of coming down from that trigger. Let's see what Lucia said. So, yeah, oh, here we go, perfect. Okay, so 5, acknowledge 5 things you see around you. Yep. Acknowledge 4 things you can touch around you. Acknowledge 3 things you hear. Acknowledge the 2 things you smell. And then I can't see the last. Oh, and then acknowledge 1 thing you can taste. So I love that. Yes. So thank you so much for sharing. And if there's someone close to me, I ask them to like squeeze. Oh, and I try to synchronize my breathing with theirs. Ooh, beautiful, Lucy. I love that. I love asking the people around you to help. And that's actually something I'm going to talk about as well. I love that. So those 5 steps that you listed, Lucy, are wonderful, and they are similar to that listing the like colors and the objects that you see. That's an even more expansive process for that, and I love it. So all of those things, again, just designed to get you to focus on everything that is present and allow yourself to remember that you're not back in the trauma that you experienced previously. So after those things, after the breathing, other thing that I recommend is listening for your true voice. And what I mean by that is when you're experiencing a trigger, a lot of times you will just hear your thoughts will start to spiral, and they'll be panicked. You'll be like, oh my God, this is happening. I have to get out. I have this. But your true voice is in you, and it's in your intuition. It still exists throughout that whole time, but it's just hard to hear because it's kind of being drowned out by the panicked thoughts that are spiraling. And so once you've come down a little bit and you've started breathing, just listen for your actual true voice, and I guarantee you it's in there. And that true voice is the one that's saying, hey, you're okay. You're in the present moment. You're safe. This is okay. You're safe. You're not back where you were. And so just really focus on listening to that inner voice. And you can even start to be that inner voice. If you're having a hard time hearing that voice, just be that voice. Say it. Start saying those things out loud. I am safe. I am okay. I'm in my living room. There are people who love me. What happened is not happening now. I'm okay. So awesome. Okay, perfect. Just looking at one of the comments. Okay. The other thing that I want to recommend is, especially when you're in isolation, maybe you're by yourself, and that can sometimes make triggers feel more difficult. Maybe you live with people, but whether or not you live with people, you can allow other people to help you with your trigger. So I call it my safety network, or like my safety team, or your feel better team. And these are just people that understand that you may experience a trigger and know what you need in order to feel safe when you're experiencing a trigger. And these are people who, if you live with, you can just go to them while you're experiencing a trigger, and they know right off the bat what you need. And I'll get to that in a second. These can also be people, if you live alone, that you can call. And again, they know what you need right off the bat, and they can help you with that. The way that you kind of create your safety team and the way that they know what you need is by communicating that beforehand. So this whole broadcast today is designed to help you create a plan for really staying sane, connected to yourself, and dealing with triggers during isolation. And so just add creating a safety team and communicating what you need in those moments to your plan. So if you, again, just going back to the beginning and kind of recapping everything we've talked to up until this point, if you have gone back and you've thought about what you learned really made time easier for you during the first isolation, okay, you made that list, and then based off of that list, you created a plan for your week or for your day that you know will kind of help you feel a little bit more sane and a little more structured during that time. And let's say you said, okay, every day I need to be able to get in my car and I need to just drive around. I'm not going anywhere. I just need to get in my car and drive so that I don't feel like I'm going crazy and trapped in my house. Okay. Now add your safety team into that. So create a list of people that you feel comfortable calling and saying, hey, I might be dealing with some triggers during this time. Can I call you if that comes up? Or sit your partner down if you live with a partner and say, hey, I might be dealing with some triggers. Here's what I need. So after you've made that list, now reflect on what you actually need when you're dealing with a trigger, because you can't just call someone and say, hey, I'm dealing with a trigger. I need you to help me with this. That's not going to help. What we do need is to be really specific about what you need. And so, for example, maybe if you live with somebody, maybe you really need to be held, like Lucia said, like squeezed tightly, and then you can just kind of manage your breathing to match theirs. So communicate with that with them. You can say, hey, if I'm dealing with a trigger, I just need you to really hold me tightly until I can get my breathing down and start to calm down. Maybe if you don't live with anybody, you need to be able to call them and you need to say, hey, I just need you to ask me to start listing colors and objects that I see. So you call your friend and your friend immediately knows and they say, okay, tell me what you see, what colors you see, what can you taste, what can you smell, what can you hear? And just list those things to your friends. And so having that safety team, making your list of your safety team, knowing who you want to communicate with during a trigger, and then being able to tell them in advance exactly what you need from them when you do experience a trigger is going to be really huge when you deal with this. Perfect. Awesome. Oh, thanks, Pablo. Great. I'm happy to be here. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is totally the support system is really important. Yes, Lucy, I love that. Yep, the support system is so important. And it's really, actually, I want to just touch on that for one more minute. A lot of times when we experience trauma, one of the identities that we can develop is the lone wolf. And we'll say, well, we didn't have anybody growing up, or we didn't have anybody during this time when I experienced trauma. I had to deal with it totally on my own. So I don't need anybody now. I'm strong. I'm super strong. I can deal with this by myself. I can deal with everything by myself. I don't need any help. And that's just keeping us trapped in the trauma. That's not helping us move forward in any way. And so allowing us to invite a safety team and a support system network into our lives, especially when we're dealing with triggers, is actually a huge sign of growth and something that you should be really proud of. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before we move on. And so now the last thing that I would like to talk about is knowing the signs of a trigger, because a lot of times we don't even, we think of triggers and we're like, oh my God, it's just something that comes out of nowhere. I have no control over it. I had no idea it was going to happen, and now I just have to deal with it. And that it feels like the case, and it can be the case. However, a lot of times there are signs that we are about to be triggered. And what I mean by that is there will be times where a song will come on and it will remind me of the trauma, or I'll see a movie scene and it's something that I wasn't expecting and it reminds me of the trauma that I've experienced. And I can immediately tell that I'm about to be triggered because I start to get, I call it like the haze. It's almost like a haze just comes over me. I can be watching the movie, but like I'm not seeing anything. My brain starts to be foggy. I know my heart starts beating and I kind of start shaking. I get sweaty. And I just know that if I don't start saying, okay, hey, no, I'm okay, I'm safe, let's leave this situation, turn the movie off, let's name our colors, let's do our breathing, all of that. I know if I don't do that, those signs tell me that I'm about to experience a trigger. And so I really encourage you to just take some time to think about maybe the last time you've experienced a trigger, and just try to remember if there are any signs. Like, are there any indications that you're about to experience a trigger? What does your body do? What do you start to feel? What do you hear or see? Just acknowledge that. And I think, and knowing what those signs are and being able to recognize them is going to be really helpful in allowing yourself to start dealing with the trigger before it even becomes a really big thing. Yeah, Lucia said that heart rate going up, up, up. Yeah, yep, that definitely happens. Just the heartbeat starts going really rapidly. Hi, Sammy from London. Awesome, very cool. Glad to have you. So actually, there's one more thing that I would love to talk about since we have a little bit of time, and that is in my eyes, there's two types of triggers. There's those triggers that come on really fast, and and they're the ones that we deal with in the way that I just explained previously. We go through all those steps. And then there's another type of trigger that just feels so big that even after we do all those steps and we're not panicked anymore, we're able to kind of live our lives and continue living, but we're still dissociating. We still it's just, for whatever reason, we're not able to quite come back to ourselves. That's the other type of trigger that I want to talk about now. And I get more body signs though. Yes. Ooh, Lucia, yes. Absolutely. So we're talking about the signs of that you're about to experience a trigger. Lucia said that she gets more kind of body signs, and I would love to hear some of the signs that you get, Lucia. But yeah, heart rate is one of them. Shaking, starting to get really overheated. Yeah, definitely. All of those things. And so before I move forward, I actually just want to recap everything that we kind of talked about. And so the first thing that we talked about is just how now that we have some stay-at-home orders that are being reissued and lockdowns are starting again, a lot of us are getting really nervous because we're thinking, oh my God, I cannot experience what I experienced before. I can't do this again. That was horrible. I don't want to do it again. And what I want to just remind everyone to start with is that this is no longer the first time you've ever experienced it. We had such intense reactions and emotions and experience last time because it was the first time we ever experienced a lockdown for a global pandemic, right? But since then, we have learned, okay, here are some of the things that come up. Here are some of the things that have made me feel better during those times. Here's what I need in order to get through this time. We now actually are equipped with that information. And so that is going to make this second isolation and this second lockdown just a little bit easier. And so I just want everyone to remember that. After you've been able to remind yourself of that, I really encourage you to make a list of the things that really helped you feel better during those times. And then based on that list, create a plan for this next lockdown. So for example, if you learn that you just have to get out of your house, so if that's going for a walk or taking your dog for a walk or just getting in your car and driving around, you now know that it is absolutely essential that you leave your house at least once a day, even if you're not going anywhere. Add that. So now create a plan that allows for you to do that at least once every single day. And then the other thing that we talked about, just for everybody who's tuning in now, is how to deal with the triggers. Because, and I talked about this in a previous broadcast, so you can scroll down on my profile and watch this one. But I talked about how a lot of the things that we're experiencing during quarantine, such as feelings of being trapped or feelings of not knowing how long this discomfort will last, or what will happen in the future. A lot of those resemble experiences that we had during trauma. And so for this reason, we are dealing with so many triggers that we have to navigate. So some of the ways that you can deal with triggers are, one, just leaving the situation, get out. Especially if you're in your home, just move to another space or get outside if you can. And then we talked about listing colors and objects that you see. So once you've left the situation, just get back to that present moment and remind yourself that you're not in the time of trauma. You are here now in the present and you're safe. So yellow pillow, green book, gray curtains, whatever you see, just list those colors and those objects, and then focus on your breathing. And then listen for your voice. Be that voice that really allows you, that tells you, hey, you're safe. This is okay. You're not back where you were. You're in your house. You're safe. You have your family here. If your friends are on speed dial if you need them, like, you're okay. And then lastly, really incorporating some grounding techniques into your daily routine as well are going to be huge, because as we talked about earlier, when you are grounded and centered in yourself and able to stay in the present, you're actually in a much better position not to experience a trigger. And if a trigger does come up, you're going to be much more grounded while navigating that trigger. And so that could be as easy as, again, going outside every day or taking a cold shower. That's very grounding. We talk about dancing. That's a really great way to get into your body and move and be grounded. Also, just sitting and listening to your favorite songs is one of the things that we talked about. Additionally, we talked about that stainless steel spoon that you can rub on the bottom of your feet, because that really can help keep you grounded. And so all of those are really great ways to come back to yourself and work through triggers. So if anybody has any questions or anything that they would like to share, I would love to see it in the comments. One of the things that I would love to talk about in a future broadcast, because it's actually come up and I don't think we have a ton of time, enough time to get to it today, but it's come up in multiple broadcasts and I've had questions about it, is dealing with that. What happens when you can't quite come back to yourself after experiencing a trigger? So you've done everything, you've walked through all the steps that we did, but you're like, now you still just have this sense where that you're dissociating or that you're mentally checked out and you can't quite come back to yourself. How do you deal with that? And I would love to do a future broadcast where I actually walk you through a guided reflection and meditation. I call it the meeting spot meditation, and it's where you have you visualize. It's almost like when you're a little kid and you go to like a festival and your mom says, if you get lost, meet me at this giant apple ride. And you're like, okay, if I get lost, I'm meeting at this giant apple ride. So it's really choosing a meeting spot for yourself to come back to whenever you know that you've dissociated or that you've experienced a trigger. And it's it doesn't have to be an actual real life place. It's a place that you mentally go and you just wait for yourself to come back to you. And so we can definitely do a future broadcast where we talk about that. Awesome. And Lucia, yes, in regards to some of the body signs that you experienced and you know that you're about to experience a trigger, you said heart rate, my body temperature, yes, my body temperature will increase. Shaking, yep, tunnel vision, cold sweats are like the most common, absolutely, yep. Tunnel vision I think is so important. That's kind of what I meant when I said like I experienced that haze. It's just like, whoo, I don't see really anything. I could be looking at something, but I'm not really seeing it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's see. Okay, cake pops. Would love one right now. Oh, yeah, I would always love a cake pop. I like that comment. I've come like, how can you make healthy relationships with people and heal yourself and people in circle? Like making the healing process difficult because they're not getting it. Interesting. So I see. We have a good question. How can you make healthy relationships with people and heal yourself when people only take and not give? Like making the healing process difficult because they're not giving you more positive experiences. So to learn how to trust and be vulnerable and not cold and shut off. Ooh, beautiful question. So how do you learn to trust and be vulnerable and not cold and shut off? So there's so many different directions that we can go into this. And I will answer this question. I just want to first encourage anyone who wants to dive into really working through trauma that they've experienced. Please check out my book, Cake Pops and Coffee, A New Conversation About Trauma. I cover so many of these topics and a lot of the ones that the questions are about. I talk about in my book, and I do so in a way that is not surrounded by the heaviness that so many healing resources are surrounded by. I really try to use lightheartedness and even humor and offer really practical and easy and even fun ways to heal from trauma, to grow closer to yourself, and to really move forward. So please check out my book. You can also check out, I have an online program that you can take at katiemaloneycoaching.com. So please check that out if you're interested in diving deeper. And as far as your question, how can you learn to trust and be vulnerable and not cold and shut off? So again, there's so many different directions that I could take this. I'm going to answer it in two parts. The first suggestion that I have is to heal everything, not everything, because I mean, healing is a continuous process, is a lifelong journey, but really do everything that you can to deep dive into the deepest parts of yourself and connect with yourself. And what I mean by that is identify the voids, any voids that were created either by trauma or by those past relationships where you stated that people take and don't receive, or people take and don't give back. Identify all the voids that were created in that moment, and then make them your best friends. Cuddle up to your voids, get closer to them. And if you want more information on how to do that, check out my book or the online program, and really heal those deepest parts, because only when you heal all those parts and you identify the sometimes the habits that you're even unconsciously or subconsciously living out, that are kind of attracting the same experiences over and over again. Only when you heal that are you going to be able to kind of break that cycle. The second thing that I really recommend is, a lot of times when, I know for myself, for the longest time, I truly believed that I couldn't, people ask me all the time, like, how have you learned to trust after experiencing trauma? How can you learn to trust a partner and be in a romantic relationship again? And my answer to that is always, usually when you don't feel like you can trust someone, it's because you don't actually trust yourself. There's a part of you that believes that you're not able to choose the right type of people to enter into your life. And so really using a lot of really healing the part of yourself that doesn't trust or believe in the fact that you have everything you need in order to be able to identify the people who will both give and receive, or give and and receive your love. I think it's going to be really important. Just learning how to truly trust yourself. And Lucia, thank you so much. I saw that you said that you can vouch for the online program. Yes, Lucia has done it, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. I think we're about at time. So if anybody has any more questions, I first just appreciate everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking about this. I think it's so important right now. If you have any more questions and you want to reach out, please feel free to message me, visit my website, check out my social media pages at Katie Maloney Coaching on Instagram. You can message me. And I look forward to seeing all of you again next week, next Friday at 3 p.m. And absolutely, Alexa, thank you. Thank you for your question. So thank you, everyone, and that's really complicated. Oh, thank you, Lucia. Awesome. I hope that everyone has a great rest of the day and a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week.